The events in today's episode of Mythal Lethal Pantheon Reapers are essentially the events that inspired this entire series to happen in the first place, so I hope you're ready for it. If you're new to this series, I recommend starting from the beginning. I'll link the playlist in the cards and the description, but for a brief recap of where we left off last time, Mythal and Alexis fought Tarsa to the brink of defeat, but once they got her pinned down, Alexis couldn't bring herself to kill the so-called Archonic Goddess. Alexis's friends were clearly quite frustrated with her for this, but Mythal tried to calm everyone down, and said that her husband, Ortis Vanimo, could help figure out the best steps they could all take moving forward. Unfortunately, the Archon Kaijagrek stepped in, grabbed Mythal and Alexis, and transported them both away from all of their allies into dimension F920. While we haven't heard what happened yet, Alexis had some very unfortunate circumstances occur in this realm just recently, and Mythal has suggested that she has also spent some time here. 8 dark decades, in fact. Kaijagrek is also clearly angling for Mythal to kill Alexis so that Mythal can take the Reaper's powers from her, but let's see what Mythal chooses to do now that these three are isolated together in this unusual dimension. Let's get into it, shall we? Let's go. Hit like if you want, subscribe if you feel like, but either way, enjoy the show. Mythal's mind leapt back thousands of years. She could still clearly see her darkest day trapped in dimension F920. She was wielding a white shadow sword, screaming furiously in the middle of a bustling city street, trying to get any of the people around her to understand. She could barely maintain her weapon's form, and white smoke sputtered and spat off her uncontrollably.
How do you not see it? How do you possibly not understand how shattered your realities are?
Surrounding her were confused authority figures of different varieties. Some looked like police officers, some knights in armor, one an Old West sheriff. The gathering confused crowd was just as scattered in their appearances. Around each of them was a different colored prism, inside which Mythal could see glimpses of what they perceived as the reality they lived in. The different prisms glitched and warped with those of other people around them as they got close to one another, though nobody other than Mythal could see this happening. The knight leaned closer to the police officer and said, "A suppression incantation may be in order. I fear she may lash out at any moment." The officer replied, "You think we ain't already shot her with a taser? Didn't do jack." She stomped closer.
How can you not see it? How do you not hear it? He speaks of magic, you speak of modern weaponry. How is it that none of you can see through this?
They just backed slightly away and urged the crowd back as well.
If Ortis were here, he would make you all see. He'd have found a way. Ortis...
She dropped to her knees.
I give up. I can't do it.
In that moment, Mythal was more shattered than she'd ever been. 76 years trapped in F920, and it had finally broken her. That very moment, she had accepted that she couldn't fix this world, and she may never get home to Ortis. Despite how horrible it felt, Mythal always looks back at this moment with a smile. Despite living for thousands of years, that was what she considered to be the single greatest moment of her life. And she realized that Alexis may be on the brink of a moment much like it herself. "Alexis," Mythal started, trying to play her own cards close to her chest. "You've clearly been here. What happened to you last time you came to this place?" Alexis tried to slow her breathing to little effect. Her eyes darted around anxiously as she spoke. Because I have the Reaper's powers, it's supposed to be my job to stop any overseers from making any creatures or beings that are too powerful and risk leaving their dimension and destroying other dimensions. If an overseer gets too out of control with the things they're creating or with what they're doing, if they make something that can't be stopped, I'm supposed to kill the overseer. Doing that with the Reaper's powers will slaughter every being from that overseer's dimension." Mythal knew all that, but didn't assert as such, simply allowing Alexis to go on. "There aren't a ton of overseers left, so since getting the Reaper powers, I hadn't been forced to handle any situation like that. Until a few days ago, my yellow ring warned me that there was a growing threat in dimension F920. It said that the overseer of this realm, Laionaline, had created dozens of entities with multiverse-threatening potential." Mythal nodded, interested to hear that Laionaline was indeed still the overseer of this realm. Alexis went on. I transported myself into F920, just planning to check it out and see if I'd need any of my friends to help. But as soon as I got into this world, I could feel that something was wrong with it. I could feel that I'd come through a locked dimension to get in here, one that only I could get into as the Reaper, so my friends couldn't have even come here if they wanted to help. The first thing I saw was that, she said, pointing to the city made up of dozens of different types of structures from different eras, seen through colorful prisms. I flew over to check it out and didn't really understand what I was seeing. Everyone looked like they were in a different reality, but all walking with a little piece of their reality moving with them. I asked the rings what was going on, and they just said, time in this realm is shattered. Each being exists in a different timeline from the people around them. They can technically interact, but nobody is seeing the same reality when they do. Their mind, their own individual reality, completely rewrites what's said to them and what happens to fit into their idea of what reality is, so nobody is ever actually hearing each other or experiencing what the people around them are experiencing. They're all just trapped, alone in an illusion. Mythal felt as though she were listening to herself from the past explaining F920 and how it worked. She also noticed that Kaijagrex was being rather quiet. Given he'd previously asserted that he'd watched Mythal and Ortis's lives from the non-physical realm prior to acquiring a body, she wondered if he'd been able to witness her time in this realm. Alexis went on. The Reaper rings tried to tell me how to find Laionaline, but whenever I tried to teleport to the place they were suggesting, I wouldn't just move through space, but time would shift too, and Laionaline wouldn't be where I went. It took me a while to realize that's what was even happening. Laionaline had sensed that I had entered this universe and had also been trying to find me, but he's just as terrible at trying to travel through his own universe because of how shattered time is here. He has made a sort of nexus point for himself, though, that he can always get back to, and when he finally found me, he grabbed me and transported me to it. To see all the horrible things he'd made there. Mythal thought. Alright, so Laionaline recalls some of what he and I learned in my time here, but what has caused him to forget the rest? Alexis continued. He was working out of this building that changed from looking like a broken down castle to a destroyed science lab to a bunch of other locations while we were standing in it. There was barely a ceiling above us, and all around the air, and even in some cages in the building, there was an army's worth of monsters and beings with insane power levels, all because he wanted to try to make something that could break out of his dimension to start threatening other worlds just to lure me to him, to lure the Reaper into his realm. Mythal said, he wanted you to kill him, to wipe out the entirety of F920. Alexis nodded, shaking, looking around as if expecting Laionaline to show up at any second. He said he'd tried to make a world in which time travel was possible, even though in our multiverse, it's not supposed to be. When he succeeded in making time travel work in this world, not only did it automatically lock off his universe so nobody could get in or out, but as more and more people traveled back in time, it changed the events of the future in this world, meaning they didn't travel back in time in the first place, but in another timeline they still did. Laionaline described time as like a living thing that was trying to correct its structure every time someone traveled back and changed things. Like time was trying to make itself make sense for everyone, but it was getting harder and harder, and eventually it just broke. Like time itself decided it couldn't make a reality that made sense to everyone, so it separated everyone into their own realities. Now nobody here is living in the same timeline, and they're all just stuck in their own isolated realities, and Laionaline has tried everything to fix it and can't, so he just wants to end it. He doesn't want everyone here to just keep being alone forever. He also believes in reincarnation, so he thinks it's just a mercy to kill everyone here and let their souls move on to new lives. But that isn't what you believe, I gather, Mythal said plainly. Alexis shook her head. Maybe that does happen occasionally, in rare cases where God gives someone a second chance to live a life they were meant to, but we can't just assume that that happens to everyone. If I just wipe out a whole universe, how many people might I be condemning to hell? Mythal nodded, thinking to herself. Ah, so that's what Kaijagrex meant. She's a follower of Christ. That can mean very different things in different dimensions, and even within the same dimension, but Grex likely was misrepresenting her beliefs in order to rile me up. Alexis had paused as if waiting for Mythal to argue or say anything. Alexis was probably used to others scoffing at or being condescending to her for her beliefs, and was waiting to see if Mythal would react in kind. Mythal simply encouraged her to go on. Clearly Laionaline did not convince you, as this realm is still here. Alexis shook her head. I couldn't do it. I told him there had to be another way, some way to fix things, but he wouldn't listen. He said he would just keep making more and more powerful creatures, and my rings warned me that some of the ones he'd made already were powerful enough to break out of this dimension despite the locks on it. So I just started destroying the monsters. But he'd made so many, and they were so strong. I was fighting nonstop for days. It might have even been weeks, and I was getting so exhausted, and he kept telling me that it was pointless, and he was just gonna keep making more and more, that it wouldn't stop. He wouldn't stop until I killed him. Eventually, I'd wiped out almost all of the creatures he'd made, and I just had to get out of there. I tried transporting home like I would going to any other dimension, but instead I ended up in this, like a space between realities. These lights and orbs were flashing and moving all around me, and when I got a brief glimpse into them, it was like they were each showing different realities or different dimensions, I don't know. But I tried focusing on my home dimension, and finally this big orb appeared in front of me. It was glitching and flashing hundreds of different images, like it was jumping through random points in history from my world. I didn't know what was going on, but I was just so exhausted that I tried jumping into it. It didn't work. My yellow ring came down in front of my face and said, "Traveling backwards through time is not permitted in the Eldrin multiverse." I tried again and again and just kept getting that warning. I don't even really know what I did to finally get home, but when I did, it had only been a few hours for my friends, and I don't even know how long it had been for me. It was like a nightmare. And then as soon as I got back, the leader of the Archons showed up and dragged me into a fight with Tarsa, where Sterling, my friend who can usually help me through stuff like that nightmare, we don't even really know what happened to him. He was talking to himself during the fight and then just fell unconscious and hasn't woken up since. And I was a jerk just before he passed out when he was just trying to help. That extra detail about Sterling just made this whole thing an even louder echo of Mythal's past. In our fight today, would Sterling have reacted to you not killing Tarsa in the same manner as your other allies did? I mean, I don't think so. I know he wanted me to kill Tarsa too. He's good at staying calm even when he's mad, but I would have said that about Heath and Mara too. Even Kate, I haven't seen that mad in a long time. I just don't know how to fix this, any of this.
I know one way,
Grex finally interjected.
You do your freaking job, or let someone who's not a little baby take your job and do it herself,
he said, clearly gesturing at Mythal.
Even if Tarsa did get sent to hell, so what? She's basically the devil already anyway, right?
With some anger peering over her anxiety, Alexis leered at Grex. Said the demon? And what don't you understand about damnation to eternal fire, eternal punishment, eternal separation from God? Maybe I don't know what that really looks like. Maybe hell is just a loveless void. Some say it is getting tortured by demons. Some say it's just suffocating bodies stacked on top of each other, writhing in pain forever. But yeah, Tarsa obviously deserves to be punished, but do you get how long eternity is? Even if she deserved to be punished for 1,000,000 years for what she's done, that's not even a blink compared to eternity. I can't do that to someone, even someone Someone you hate, Mythal said. I
I don't have hate in my heart. I'm not a hateful person. I just want to stop her from hurting anyone without condemning her to that. But I want my friends to understand that too. I know they've been patient, but I'm trying to do what's right for everyone. Mythal didn't need Ortis's ability to see auras to understand Alexis was on the brink of a breakdown, on the brink of her rock bottom. Mythal could feel Alexis's pain, but also knew the good that came on the other side of rock bottom when a strong person finally hits that low. Mythal maintained a neutral expression, but was smiling on the inside. She thought to herself, "Well, it seems I've been given a gift here. You have been as well, Alexis, by having me put in your path, but it certainly won't feel that way at first. As much as I'd like to reassure you and comfort you that you are clearly just a good soul doing your best in a difficult set of circumstances, that would only delay what needs to happen. I'd be hurting you with the mask of helping, and instead must do the opposite." Mythal forced her neutral expression to shift into a judgmental scowl. Her thought continued. "It took me 76 years to hit rock bottom in this place. Even if I have to play the part of the villain in your story to do it, I'm going to make sure it does not take you nearly as long."
Very brief interruption to say that on Monday, not only will I have a brand new Gone Grim color variant art book releasing, which has menacing recolorings of a bunch of art that I love of mine, but I will also be having a sale on a bunch of my other books, reducing the prices of them, and this book itself is going to be the least expensive one I've put out so far for $9.99 American. So it'll be the perfect time to snatch up a whole bunch of different PopCross Studios books if you've been wanting them. So get excited for that. The sale might even start a little bit early. You might even want to go check now. But for now, back into the episode.
Mythal held out her hand and a short staff appeared in it. Alexis stared, curious what Mythal was doing. As it grew, giant blades formed on both ends of it, making a massive weapon. That truly is a heartbreaking story, but it does not change what needs to be done. As much as I hate to admit it, Kaijigrex is correct. You can either commit right here to killing Tarsa the instant we relocate her, for whatever reason you tell yourself, or I will be forced to strip you of the Reaper's abilities so I can do it myself. Mythal could practically see Alexis's heart drop. Part of Mythal wanted to change course, but was certain that this was what Alexis needed. I thought... You what? You thought I was going to tell you that everything will be fine. It's all right that you're allowing millions to be killed just to avoid offing that wretch Tarsa? Is that what your little pet Sterling would do? Pat you on the head and say everything will be all right? Perhaps he's been too soft to point out to you that you clearly don't actually have any faith in your god, seeing as how you think your imaginary friend can't even be trusted with what he does with the dead in this little fantasy world you live in. Alexis's confusion quickly turned back into rage. Watch it, Mythal. I'm obviously not in the mood to deal with someone like you. Someone like me? Someone who's known enough gods to know that all of them are fakes and those who follow them are fools? Grex chuckled excitedly.
All right. It's about time you put your foot down, God Queller.
Mythal took a step closer to Alexis and twirled her weapon, mildly irritated that Kaijigrex clearly thought she meant what she was saying and that he was getting what he wanted. Mythal wasn't sure what he'd do after her plan panned out, but she trusted that Alexis could handle him. Alexis took a step back to the edge of the mountain. Purple smoke was spewing off her like a busted fire extinguisher, some of it slowly forming into a scythe behind her. Alexis snarled, shifting between heartbreak and fury. I'm not doing this with you. I'm not going to try to convince you that God is real, that he loves you no matter what a violent tyrant you are. I heard your story from Ares. I know how quick you are to jump to murder as the solution to your problems. I was starting to think you were better than that, but obviously I was wrong. Mythal laughed. Oh, I'm the violent tyrant, am I? What about this god you believe in? Don't think I haven't come across many misguided fools of the same cult as you from across the multiverse. You believe that your God created everything and everyone, made people to exist for, 80-odd years, only to be tortured for all eternity if they don't follow some vague and arbitrary rules? Have you ever been tortured, Reaper? Don't call me that! One of my closest friends was tortured for 3 weeks in a time when I could not be around to protect her. When I eventually returned, it had broken her spirit so greatly that she asked me to take her life. 3 weeks is all it took to break her, so if I truly believed this God of yours was real, and was condemning people to endless eternity of torture, I'd stop trying to hunt Tarsa or the Archons or anyone, and dedicate my life to hunting down and slaughtering your God. What you claim to worship is no loving God, but a vicious tyrant worse than any demon to ever exist. Shut up, Mythal! Alexis's scythe formed and her arm shook with fury as she held it, now floating up off the mountain to be taller than Mythal's menacing stature. Ignoring her, Mythal said, "But I won't dedicate myself to doing that because, as I said, he's nothing but your irksome imaginary friend, in whom you don't have any faith to begin with. If you did, you'd kill Tarsa and trust him to sort her out. You simply don't want to admit that your God died to you long ago. And you're simply clinging to others' beliefs? Believing what they tell you to of your God while pretending those beliefs are your own? Keep clinging to that and it will keep making you weak. Even you must know deep down that your friends will be better off without an indecisive leader like you pretending to have any semblance of an idea of what's right. I saw how they spoke. They've clearly put together how broken you are, so you had better..." Faster than Mythal could think, Alexis made the distance between them vanish, and slashed her scythe across Mythal's chest. It carved a gash into her and simultaneously sent her hurtling backwards, exploding into another mountainside, and sending boulders and debris hurtling into the fields below. Mythal stood up in the crater and waved her sword, sending a gust of wind that blew the debris away, so she could see Alexis seething in the air above her. "Blast, that hurt," Mythal thought. "Forget falling into God sleep as I planned. She may actually kill me here. What an ironic turn that would be, though technically would still achieve my aim." Aloud, Mythal growled. "Is that the best you can do? When I said you were weak, I didn't think you were that weak. Tarsa's most frail blow hurt more than that." "Just shut up, Mythal. I'm not doing this with you," Alexis groaned. Mythal thought, insults to her strength clearly don't get her riled up, but there are more open wounds to be salted. "Tell me, I gather you go to a collective place of worship in your realm, yes? Perhaps a church? How do the other cult followers react to your Reaper rings, made by demons? Or do you hide them so they don't all fill squirt guns with holy water to spray you down, Once again, Mythal had almost no time to react as Alexis pulled all the debris from the mountain towards her to make a fist bigger than her own body and smashed it into Mythal, pile driving her farther into the mountain, crashing through it into a cave on the inside. She sprang up quickly as Alexis crashed through the hole in the wall, swinging her scythe as she moved. The rocks and rubble slowed her down just enough for Mythal to get her own weapon raised and into the Reaper's path. Alexis hit hard, but Mythal was braced this time and was only knocked back a short way. Alexis came in again and swung again, and this time, Mythal stopped the blow and held her ground. "Touchy-touchy, are we? So you haven't told them then, have you? You just let them show up to praise an imaginary god while seated next to someone with real demonic powers. Seems a touch cruel, don't you think? Whatever would they think of you if they knew?" Why are you so... Alexis couldn't put together a full sentence through her fury and the tears forming on her face. "Hate me with all your heart, Alexis," Mythal thought. "I promise this will help you." Alexis pulled one hand free from her scythe, clenched her fist twice, and the entire cave around Mythal exploded into boulders and collapsed in on her. She was thrashed and rolled and pummeled before finally being hurtled free from the rocks and spinning through the air, outside the mountain once again. She formed her White Shadow rocket boots and held in the air. "Mineral reformation, Ruby Serpent!" Alexis yelled. The falling boulders gathered together and shifted state into a ruby gem serpent that swirled through the air towards Mythal with its fangs bared. Mythal stuck her weapon to her back and grabbed the serpent's fangs. It pushed her backwards and slammed her into another mountain face. With her back driven into the wall, she was just barely able to hold off the serpent. Oh, now I see why you're so uncomfortable making this little toy to battle for you. In your cult, is the snake not the symbol of the devil? Perhaps you've realized that the Reaper may very well be the fabled devil your kind speak of. The snake suddenly burst into pieces as Alexis slashed her way through it and stabbed her scythe right through Mythal's side. Mythal bit her tongue to keep herself from shrieking out in pain. Thinking once more, "Alright, fun as it may be facing a foe who truly outmatches me, I think there is a genuine chance I don't survive this. Really should have taken that into full consideration sooner. Even if I hadn't lost my immortality millennia ago, the Reaper's powers still likely could have laid waste to me then. Her title is not just some decorative moniker, after all." Mythal headbutted Alexis and she flew back through the cloud of crumbling ruby. Mythal sprang forward, grabbing her weapon from her back, and swung it at Alexis's side. Alexis held her arm out, thinking that'd be enough to block it, but she was hit hard and pinwheeled through the air. She abruptly stopped in midair, then zipped away so fast that it was like she'd teleported. Before Mythal could get sight of her again, the scythe carved across her back. Mythal whipped around, swinging her blade, but hit nothing, turning only to be slashed across her back again. Mythal flexed her whole body and white shadow armor emerged all over her. Another slash carved across her side, but was at least dulled by the protection. Mythal swung wildly in a circle and finally felt her dual blade strike its mark. Alexis yelled out in pain as Mythal saw that her weapon had struck Alexis's side, right where Tarsa's bird horror had pierced her with its claws. Mythal felt bad, but still slammed her weapon down into Alexis's back, sending the Reaper hurtling downwards, only for Alexis to recover in the air just above the grassy field below. Mythal formed a white shadow rocket launcher with 8 barrels over her shoulder and fired all 8 projectiles at once, spinning through the air towards her target. Alexis clenched her fist, and a shockwave warped through the dirt and grass beneath her. Then, stones and dirt burst up into the rocket's paths, and they all exploded before reaching Alexis. Alexis then fired through the dirt and just started slashing at Mythal over and over and over again. Mythal could see that there was no need to keep laying on the insults. Alexis was in pure fury and acting from her pain. She looked just how Mythal felt before finally breaking down. "Thinking about it, I'm not even sure I can fall into God sleep now that I'm no longer technically fully immortal. Ugh, this is why I still let Ortis do the strategizing. I'm capable of it now, but he's still far better at it. Regardless, there's no backing out now. Alexis is teetering on the edge and needs to fall off, or she'll never teach herself to fly." Their blades clashed in the air between the mountains hundreds of times, before their battle crashed down into the field, then into the skies above, then back down on top of another mountain. Mythal didn't let Alexis see it, but Mythal was getting weaker and weaker. Mythal was starting to strategize how she could make this as close as possible without actually facing her own ultimate end. "Someone as spiteful and cruel as you can never get the powers of the Reaper. I bet you'd kill whole universes without even giving it a second thought," Alexis shrieked, clearly trying to make Mythal feel any semblance of the same emotional pain Mythal had unloaded onto her. "Please let this be the last cruel thing I must say to end this." With as much venom in her voice as she could muster, Mythal said, "If spiteful and vicious are your terms for decisive and merciful, then that I am. I'll use the powers for good, while you've selfishly hoarded them so nobody can actually use them to help anyone. You know it, and your friends know it. How often do you think they've considered having someone slit your throat while you sleep so they can take and use the powers themselves, You know it must have crossed their minds. Do you think Sterling ever dreamed of doing it himself? Or is he as pathetically afraid to act as you are?" That seemed to hit just the nerve that Mythal needed. They'd fought long enough for Mythal to get used to how Alexis moved, so Mythal saw the scythe coming for her chest. It was far too fast to do much, but Mythal did her best to try and make the blade just barely miss its mark. The Reaper struck. Mythal let out an aggravated gasp as the scythe pierced straight through her chest. Mythal's whole body shook in agony. Then everything went black. "Oh, well, that was brutal," Mythal thought. "Oh, but at least it's over, and I think she missed my heart. This should be perfect. She'll think she's killed me and Wait a minute. Why do I no longer feel the pain?" Mythal suddenly realized that she was no longer in her body. She could see her body, as if observing it and Alexis and the whole scene from dozens of different angles.
Alexis's scythe had faded away into smoke, and she was just kneeling over Mythal's body.
No, wait, you're not dead. I'm not. I just wanted you to shut up. The rings. Is her soul still in there? Please tell me it is.
The rings floated down in front of Alexis's face. The briefest glint of hope flashed in her eyes as she started trying to put pressure on the gaping wound. As she did, Mythal could feel herself recollecting, like she was being pulled back towards her body.
Oh, blast again! Those rings can assure her I'm not dead? So even if I had fallen into God sleep, her powers would have informed her I was fine. So much for that plan. I'd certainly rather not actually die, but if I reawaken so quickly, Alexis may not hit rock bottom as hard as she needs to. What a waste of a wonderfully despicable and vile performance that would be. Oh, perhaps it can't be helped. I want to help Alexis, but I'd also very much like to see Narati integrate her white shadow before I meet my end. Not to mention Ortis would be quite displeased if I kicked the bucket before him.
The window seemed to be closing. The longer Mythal stayed out of her body, the weaker the connection got. She needed to either return to her body now, or leave it and face death. She was holding out until the last possible second, when a voice echoed around her.
We can help keep you away longer, God Queller. I'd love to hear about this bizarre little game you just played with the Reaper.
What? Who's there? Mythal replied as a black void was starting to overtake the scene before her. A bright light appeared above her, and she realized that's where the voice was coming from.
We can pluck you away and return you when you so choose, if you'll agree to come and have a little audience with me and my sister.
Is that you, God? You have a sister? I fear Alexis may be terribly disappointed with how grating your voice is. Mythal chuckled. I'm also not feeling particularly compelled to trust you, oh disembodied voice trying to lure me into the light.
Why not? We returned your husband to his body once, and we can do the same for you. But your time to decide grows thin. Tick-tock, God Queller.
Mythal suddenly realized who was speaking, or at least she had an idea. She looked back at her body, slowly fading from sight, with Alexis desperately crying over her.
Please come back. I'm not a killer. Please, nobody will ever forgive me for this.
Break down now, Alexis. You'll rebuild into a person more at peace than the old version of you could ever have even imagined. I did it, and you're stronger than I was then. Mythal turned her attention to the light.
Alright, let's have a chat. But if you don't return me to my body when I see fit, like you've said, I solemnly swear I will never stop annoying you for as long as I'm in the non-physical realm.
A hand reached out and pulled Mythal into the light. Her soul separated from her body, and the rings told Alexis as much. Alexis collapsed to her side in tears, shaking in disbelief at what she'd just done. This was Alexis's rock bottom. This was where Alexis needed to be in order to truly be reborn. My goodness, was that an intense episode to write. There were a lot of rewrites. I was not happy with the first draft of this, but I am quite pleased with how it ended up panning out. And it just so happens that the big episode of the first arc of Mythal Lethal Pantheon Reapers is happening at the same time as the big episodes of the Book of Bayou Knights. So I've been having to fire on all cylinders creative writing-wise. Definitely going to take a week off after the Book of Bayou Knights is finished and the first act of Mythal Lethal Pantheon Reapers is finished, so in a month or so. But hey, if you want something a little bit more light and breezy than this episode was, you might want to check out my new episodes of turning anything into Spider-Man or Godzilla. They've got a bit more of a vloggy format to them, I'm working in more of my personality to them, and they've been a lot of fun to make and a nice little break from the intensity of the creative writing from these two series. And I've got another one coming up on Monday that should be fun. But anyway, besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or inspiring note, and the thought I want to leave people with today is something that's heavily implied in this episode, which is that hitting rock bottom can be one of the best things that can happen to you. Sure, it can just break you, but if you decide that it will, it can springboard you into the best season of your life. It can force you to look at things that you've been tolerating in your life and go, why have I been tolerating this? And while it won't happen instantly, the decisions that you lock into making from rock bottom can help launch you into the greatest version of your life possible, better than you thought it could even be. So I hope that's inspiring. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next video on Monday. Goodbye.